All right, Nuggets fans, welcome in to Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BETONLINE. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am excited to talk about some breaking news that we just got. Markieff Morris re-signing with the Dallas Mavericks. No, we got that did actually come across the pipeline like 2 minutes ago, but no, we're going to talk about Jamal Murray. We're going to talk about the saga, the contract, non-extension, extension, the discussions that were being had. Ultimately, seems like that has come to pass, and now Jamal Murray has agreed to a max contract with the Denver Nuggets to keep him in the Mile High City through 2029. Very excited for Denver. Very excited for Jamal Murray. He gets his money after, given somebody who with him has suffered as many injuries as he has. I always thought that this was the right call to try to get the guaranteed contract, try to get as much up front as possible. I thought that it made sense to do it before the Olympics, but other parties had things in mind and took a little bit. I know everybody, especially if you're coming here, you're like, hey, Ryan, weren't you the guy that was talking about why Jamal Murray may not sign, why this saga is going on? I was, and it did go on. And ultimately, cooler heads prevailed, I think, and the Nuggets, I think, kind of came to an agreement or came to an assessment that they needed Jamal Murray in a Nuggets uniform long term. And I think he gets a whole bunch of guaranteed money as a result. So we're going to talk about it all. I hope you are having a great Saturday. Some surprising news obviously coming forth, and we'll be able to talk about some good Nuggets news, I think. It's my personal opinion. But real quick, this podcast, as you know, is brought to you by good friends over at BetOnline, the number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads, and to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Head on over to get their $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every single week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of the $200K. Head on over to their website to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. Link is in the description below. Okay. Important thing for the Nuggets to get done. I do not have the PowerPoint sort of uploaded, although I guess I could try to do that for everybody for the just so that everybody can see the visual for the salary cap. But while I do that, let's just talk about Jamal. Let's talk about this move and how important it was to get it done. I don't know if you heard me on Locked On Nuggets talking with Swipe over there, but we talked about this extension. We talked about this move and how I thought it was important for Denver to get this done. I thought it was important for Calvin Booth and the Nuggets to kind of have a win after everything just sort of fell through for Denver during this offseason. I think they had some things that they tried to do, didn't get everything done that they wanted to do, but ultimately it does appear that they are making this happen. Sorry, let me just fix this real quick. But it does seem like the Nuggets kind of needed a win, and this is a good way to make that happen. This was a good way to get that done. Jamal Murray is not the perfect he's not the perfect player. He's not the perfect piece that hey, we're going to pay him $1 million, like a million bajillion dollars, and it's going to work out exactly the way that you're hoping for it. But I do think that it was important for Nuggets fans to understand that, this is a guy that helped win you a championship, right? This is a guy that helped you cross that gate for the first time ever. And I think it's nice that the Nuggets ultimately have some stability here. They have a player that helped them win a championship who clearly did not bring his best stuff this last year, but I think it's completely reasonable to think that he'll be better going forward. I don't think that it's reasonable. I think it's actually unreasonable to think that he won't recover from this last year. I think it's honestly like assuming that this last year against the Minnesota Timberwolves, the very best perimeter defense that and interior defense combination that we may have seen in a long time in the modern NBA. And then combining that with Jamal Murray being injured and banged up throughout the entire season and never fully got back on track, I'm not surprised that ultimately it didn't work out. I had my doubts heading into that series that it would work out perfectly. And I think a lot of people just assumed that Denver would get it done, and they had a chance to ultimately get it done. They didn't in that game 7. Jamal had 35 in that game. He played pretty well, I would say. And though he did not have his best playoffs, he did rise to the occasion in a lot of ways. He did rise to the occasion in a lot of moments. And I think this contract extension, just throw this over here, it's a reminder that the long term, it is important to never get too high, never get too low, and to not be overly reactive to most things, and to just understand the body of work. What I've put up on the screen, if you're listening on the audio side of things, what I just put up on the screen is the updated kind of salary cap sheet for the Nuggets and what this looks like. Murray's going to get about 4 years, $208 million contract. That's what it's ultimately going to be. And it sounds like that was fully guaranteed. And for those of you that have been listening to the show, I had talked about how, hey, their team is trying to protect themselves a little bit. They're trying to non-guarantee some of the aspects of Murray's deal. And ultimately, it looks like that is kind of caved in. Now, we don't have the full picture. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I know exactly what the contract looks like, because I don't. Of course not. But I do think that the way that Woj reported it, the way that Shams reported it, where they said $245 million for Jamal, guaranteed money, I think that says that Denver kind of caved in a little bit here, and they gave Murray the full max, and Murray accepted it. There might be some stipulations in it. I don't know, but ultimately I think people should be treating it as what I have put up here. $46.4 million in the first year, $50.1 in the second, $53.8 in the third, $57.5 in the fourth. That's an estimation, so take it with a grain of salt if some of the decimal points are off. But I do think that that is what Bobby Marks and Adrian Wojnarowski put out, and I'm just going to trust their judgment on that one. But this does show that the Nuggets don't have that much flexibility after this move. Murray was the final sort of tipping point. Aaron Gordon obviously also has an expiring contract, and he can definitely tip the scales a little bit, like if they decide to keep him, if they decide to move on, if they decide to trade him, if there are some other things that happen in between now and then. That is the ultimate, the only kind of flexibility there. But I do think that this really lays out Denver's pecking order. Jokic obviously gets the super max. Murray gets a max. Porter's working off of his rookie max. And then Aaron Gordon, I think, will get his money ultimately. I think that that is still something that the Nuggets would like to do. But it's one of the reasons why KCP was let go, was so that they had the flexibility to be able to do that. They did not want to pay all 5 of Jokic, Murray, Porter, Gordon an insane amount of money all at once. And so what they decided to do is they have Christian Brown starting in his place for KCP, and he's going to be the cheap starter to go along with the 4 expensive starters. And that's sort of the plan for Denver over the course of, I would say, the next 2 years. Christian Brown has 2 years left on his rookie contract, as does Peyton Watson. I think that around that time, Aaron Gordon obviously has a player option for next season. There could be some shakeups over the course of the next 12 months or next 24 months. But I do think that for all intents and purposes, this is the team. This is the group that you are expecting Denver to have. Going to be fascinating. Going to be fascinating to see how this works out for the Nuggets, and I am looking forward to them probably winning 50 plus games and looking pretty good, and everybody being like, wow, wait, why are we overlooking the Nuggets? Because absolutely, that has certainly been what's happening. The reaction to this deal for Murray has been mostly negative on a national level, on just fans kind of reacting to it. And you can understand why. The health, the playoff performance last year, Denver doesn't have a lot of flexibility. I get it, but I also see this and I look at this and think, all right, this is where Denver's best chance is. Betting on Murray to get back to where he was, playing really well, and being the perfect complement to Nikola Jokic that he often is. I think that that is the right call. Couple super chats here from Cedric. Let me just go to my full screen real quick. Cedric says, "No, Jamal's not worth it. Can we finally win the championship?" ? I think that both things can be true, right? I don't think that in a vacuum Jamal is worth $52 million a season, which is what he's getting paid on this contract extension. 4 years, $208 million. I think in a vacuum, he's not worth that. But I also think that it is important for everybody to understand that Denver is paying for a very specific skill set here. They are not paying for, like, I think there are certain things that they would like about Jamal. Like, they would like for him to do one of three things, like, or win a championship again, be an all-star, and stay healthy. Like, any combination of those three or all three would be great. But I also think it is important for people to appreciate that you don't always get what you want in these situations. And Murray kind of had Denver over a barrel with these contract negotiations. They were in between a rock and a hard place here. They did not have the flexibility, the ability to really pick and choose like who they were going to get. Because if I go back to this view, sorry, I'm going to take you off the screen, Cedric, and you look at the flexibility, let's say Jamal just like wasn't re-signed and Denver took off that $46.4 million in the 2025-26 season. Let's just say that happened. You know how much salary cap room that they'd have? $600K. They'd have $600,000 in order to replace him. And so people are like, okay, so you can't sign anybody in free agency, Ryan, but can't you just trade Jamal? Well, one, you'd be trading him on an expiring contract, so he's not necessarily having max value. And two, other teams are going to be asking the same questions that Denver's having to ask themselves. And they have to wonder, is Jamal worth it to us the way that he's been worth it to the Nuggets, or may not be worth it to the Nuggets at that particular number? And so you have to kind of go back and forth. And ultimately, the Nuggets landed on the fact that Jamal coming back and just playing better is the best case scenario. And they are making the bet that it is the best case scenario. And I wonder if that's ultimately what happens. I am not going to sit here and predict that I know one way or the other, because we've seen it both ways. I'm going to be very, very interested to see whether there were actually other things on the table, because I don't think there really was. I honestly think that this was the goal. This was the option for Denver. And I think it's the right goal. Like, people know, and I've been tied to Jamal at the hip for a little bit, but I was on an island when I discussed the Jamal Murray extension the first time. 2019 comes around, he gets a max contract, probably paid a little bit too early, but given a level of trust from the Nuggets organization that he would pay it off, that he'd be good enough, that he would do everything he needed to do to fulfill that contract. And for all intents and purposes, he did. He's given the Nuggets some incredible moments over the course of these last 5 years, or the last 4 years that he's been on the max contract, plus the fifth year, which was the bubble season, which, I mean, that one worked out pretty well for Denver, I would say, and worked out pretty well for Jamal. But the Nuggets got a title, And if you told Tim Connolly back in 2019 when he was deciding whether to give Murray a max or not, if you told him that the Nuggets would win a championship with Murray under contract, then he would absolutely give it. Like there's no like question. He would absolutely say that that is a success, that it was a successful move, and the Nuggets were correct in doing so. On the other side, I'm going to talk about those three different factors and like why this was a deal that the Nuggets had to do. I've been very consistent on that. Um, and then we'll talk about some of the money stuff, but I think this was something that the Nuggets were supposed to do, that they had to get done. And I'm glad that this is out of the way. So I do not have to ask Jamal about it at media day because that was not something I was looking forward to. So when we come back, we will talk about more Jamal Murray stuff, more Jamal Murray takes, and I've got some numbers to share, of course. And I'll also get to the other super chat from Cedric. We will be right back on Mile High Sports. All right, we're back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Appreciate all the love and support on the podcast. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I would really, really appreciate it. Had some criticisms, obviously, for the July article that I wrote and some of the takes that I had back in July, which weren't takes, they were facts, about how the contract extension talks weren't going perfectly, that they were still under negotiation, and that ultimately there were questions about like whether this would become a bigger deal than it was. And I stand by that. I stand by what I wrote. I thought it was important to write the article because I had a sense that this was going to take a lot longer than people understood and realized. And ultimately, it's funny how these things work sometimes. The number that was reported was ultimately what he got. And it was about the stipulations. It was about the details. It was about making sure that Murray like got the guaranteed money that he was supposed to get, and that the Nuggets were willing to give the guaranteed money that they had previously discussed. So this is interesting. It's all fascinating to see how this works, and it makes me look like a very dumb person in the process because there was a moment in between all of this where, yeah, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. But ultimately, they got there in the end, and I think that the Nuggets will be better for it, personally. Cedric also super chatted and asked, do you think that AG wants to stay with us, Ryan? I hope that he does. I think that he does. I think that Aaron Gordon loves to be here. I think that he loves to be next to Jokic and Murray, especially Jokic, where his job is just, it's so streamlined and he gets to excel at a very specific few things. And the way that he plays, the way that he's allowed to perform in this context, I think it is important to always give AG some credit. And sometimes I don't end up doing enough of that. I talk about some of the other details. I talk about sliding Michael Porter to the 4 at times. What I will say is that because of Michael Porter, Peyton Watson, Vlatko Chanchar, drafting Deron Holmes, things like that, I think there is a world where Aaron Gordon is not on the team long term. But I also don't necessarily want to think about exploring that because the identity of the Nuggets is 3 players: Jokic, Murray, Gordon. Those are the 3. Porter is like close to part of it, but the identity of Denver, the way that they run most of their offense, running through horns at the top where AG is on one elbow, Jokic is on the other, Murray's at the top, often involves Michael Porter and KCP in the corners. And I think that they're all 4 very important. And losing one of those 4 is just going to make things difficult for Denver. So I think they're going to try to pay AG. They're going to try to find the right mix around him. And the hope is that he continues to stay as athletic as possible in this process, because athleticism can really go for somebody like Aaron, who was drafted back in 2014, has played a very physical role for a long time. He's now heading into year 11. And guys like that, they don't often last at their peak level of performance for 14, 15, 16 years. So that's why an extension could go one of two ways. All right. Couple numbers here. The cap hit for Jamal in 2025-26, the first year of the deal, it is tied for the 18th ranked salary in the NBA with Donovan Mitchell. I'm sure that there will be some other numbers that exceed it. I am sure that there will be, like, hypothetically, Jimmy Butler will probably get even more because he is a 35% kind of player. There will be some others that are in that realm as well that will get paid just a little bit more than Jamal. But think about it this way: Jamal's being paid like a top 20 player in the 2025-26 season. Right now, I think it's closer to about, I don't know, 35. That would be my guess. Let me just check that really quick. If I scroll down, Jamal Murray is being paid. Actually, it's not listed here because, oh no, it is. Like the 47th best player in the NBA in 2020. Oh no, this is contract average. My mistake. Cap hit. Sorry, this is really good podcasting, I know. Tied for the 32nd best player in the NBA. So right now, I think it'd be hard to argue otherwise that Jamal Murray is a properly paid player. Like, there are times where he will be a top 25 contributor, especially in the playoffs. And there are times where he'll be outside of the top 30 in the regular season. He hasn't made an all-star game. It's the consistency factor there, I think, drags that number down a little bit. So being paid like the 32nd best player in the NBA, I think that's about where it should be. But it also, like, this is involving, I think the Nuggets are expecting some development here. I think that they're expecting some level of consistency, some level of not consistency, but like some level of health, some level of consistency. And then beyond that, it's just about championships. Like, I wrote about 3 things in the article that I just posted on milehighsports.com. The 3 things that will define Murray's contract extension. 1, are the Nuggets winning championships? No matter what else happens, if the Nuggets win another championship or 2 that Murray contributes to, the deal will be a good one. Like, you can't ask for much more than that. And asking for much more than that, I think, is unfair, especially if the contributions are about the same as they've been in the last 2 years. Not the last 1 year, but the last 2, where sometimes you might have a good year, sometimes you might have a bad year from a consistency standpoint. But if you average those 2 out, I think it'll be reasonable if Denver gets a second or a third championship. I certainly won't be making a stink about it. But number 2, can Murray be an all-star? That would involve consistent improvement. He was close in 2021, and then I made some, like, kind of outside arguments for him in 2023 and 2024, where he contributes to a great team. He is the second best player on a championship caliber team, but he hasn't been enough he has been healthy enough or consistent enough to actually earn that spot. But $50 million per season over the course of this time is a little bit different. Like, that implies that there is a little bit more that the Nuggets are expecting from him and that Murray should continue to expect from himself. I think he wants to be. He wants to be an all-star. He wants to be consistent, and he wants to have some of that other players have had. That, like, he doesn't want to be known as the best player to never win an all-star game or to never appear in an all-star game. That's not what he wants. He wants to kind of put that to bed. But then the third thing beyond that, can he stay healthy? Over the course of the last 4 seasons that Murray has played, you remove the 2021-22 season where he missed the entire thing due to the torn ACL. Murray has averaged 57.8 games played per season over the last 4 years. So that's an average games missed of about 24 to 25. And that health and durability is obviously really important. And it's not just important for Murray, it is important for the entire team where guys don't feel like they are going to be over indexed, overtaxed during the regular season, trying to account for Murray's absence, trying to win games and play a desperate brand of basketball just to scrape into the top of the playoff picture. I think that Murray should, like, Denver's got to manage him, obviously. They have to make sure that he is not going to be overtaxing himself, because if he does happen to overtax himself and then gets injured prior to or during the playoffs because he is tired, then that probably matters even more. Denver needs him healthy and ready to go for the playoffs. It's not quite a Kawhi Leonard situation where they have to manage him like extensively, but I do think that it is something that the Nuggets and Nuggets fans have to understand. He's never going to play 75, 78, 80 games in a regular season anymore. I think that the target number should be in between 65 and 70. You want to try to be eligible for all NBA and awards at the end of the year, things like that. But the most important thing he can do is not just be healthy for himself, but healthy for his teammates. Being out there will help him. It'll help everybody involved. And so if he does those three things, if those three things happen in some combination, winning championships, earning an all-star, or consistently earning all-stars, staying healthy, then it's hard not to argue that this will be a good contract. Like, you got to squint a little bit, and you got to have some faith. You got to have some prediction that this is actually going to work out, that this is going to be good. And there is downside. I don't want to sit here and say that there isn't. Like, if Murray gets hurt, and if he is out for consistent periods of time, if things kind of fall apart, if the Nuggets don't have enough depth on their team because they are paying Murray so much money, then that is going to be a problem. And that could actually prevent the Nuggets from ever winning a championship again. That is the downside to this entire thing, which is why this was a big decision that was waited upon, that I kind of knew that this was going to be something that the team was going to take their time with, and they were going to try to avoid screwing up. Now, ultimately, they decided to make the deal anyway. And I think that they weighed the fact that the pros outweigh the cons in this case, where if you go into the season without a contract between Murray and the Nuggets, then things could get really ugly really fast. And I just don't think that that is something that the Nuggets really wanted to deal with. So it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens. I personally, like, I've been biased for a long time. I'm trying to avoid that level of bias here. I think that this is going to be the pivot point for the Nuggets over the next 5 years. I posted something online a few weeks ago, a month ago, somewhere around there, that Murray has been at the center of the championship picture for the last 5 years and the next 5 years, more so than any player in the NBA. Like, he's been the pivot point. His health determined, and his health and consistency determined over the last 5 years who the champion was going to be. And I think it could do the same over the course of this next 5 years, where if he is healthy, if he's ready to go, if he's going to all-star games, if he's averaging like 23 points, 7 assists, 40% from three, playing consistently, the Nuggets are winning his minutes. Like, if that is what's consistently happening every single day, then this is going to look really good. It's going to look awesome. And Nuggets fans are going to look back on this moment very fondly. And if it goes badly, then it has the potential to do the exact opposite. And I am looking forward to seeing which side wins out, because Nuggets fans should just want the best for their team. They should want the best for their organization. I personally think that this helps them, but I understand fans that don't necessarily agree with that. I understand the take. I understand wanting to be patient to see Murray prove it again, because he hasn't made an all-star game yet, because it's pretty consistently been sub-all-star consistency over the course of the regular season. Now, if you subscribe to the notion that the playoffs matter more than the regular season for the Nuggets, then I can understand that you would be pretty happy about this deal. Because, like it or not, Murray shows up in the playoffs when he's healthy. Like, this is something that's been proven out over the course of his career. He's been great. And this last year, where I'm not going to make extensive excuses for him, he was horrible in this last playoffs. I don't think that that defines him. I don't think that everybody should now immediately turn their backs on him. I think it is important for the Nuggets to, and for Nuggets fans, to allow themselves the flexibility to potentially change on this, to understand that Murray can absolutely help Denver win a second, third, hell, a fourth championship over the course of this next 5 years. Will it happen? Probably not, because winning a championship is freaking hard. But I think that this was their best pathway to doing so. That is my complete and utter honest opinion here. What else? Does anybody else have any other questions regarding Murray, the Nuggets, financial situations, Aaron Gordon, anything like that? I took a little bit of a break between the 20Q segments, obviously. So we've gone through 6 of the 20 there. One of my 20 Qs was to ask, hey, when is this Murray extension getting done? And now that it's done, I'll have to rewrite some of that. But it's going to be interesting to see what ultimately comes to pass here for this Nuggets team. I don't think that the Nuggets can be done. I think that if they go into the regular season and then into the playoffs with this exact roster, then they will be not a favorite over both OKC and Minnesota. I think that Minnesota still has Denver's number because Denver doesn't have enough ball handling and creation on their team outside of Murray, and that's just a ton of burden for them at that point. And then with OKC, I think that OKC is just one of those teams that people are going to be surprised. Oh yeah, they won 60 games. Yeah, it's pretty good. They have a really good team. Pandas asks, do you think it's a tradable contract? I think that is a very interesting question. If Murray plays well, then it will be. If he doesn't play well, then it won't be. I know that's a very simplistic answer for something like this, but if I throw back on the screen the contract here, 46.4 in 2025-26, the contract number effectively is the same as Paul George. Paul George is 34 years old. He signed basically a 4-year, $212 million contract for the Sixers offseason at 34. He'll be 34, 35, 36, 37. Murray will be 27 this year. Then he will be 28, 29, 30, 31. If he stays healthy or relatively healthy, then I think that it is completely reasonable to think that this is a tradable contract and other teams would want a player like Jamal Murray on their roster. Especially because it's really, really hard to get a high-level creator in the playoffs, and Murray has proven that he can do that. Now, how much of that is tied to playing with Jokic? Who knows? And that is up to those other teams to figure out. Chris asks, does the contract have stipulations? I don't know. What I read from Woj in that tweet was that is a $245 million guaranteed over the next 5 years. That includes the $36 million that he has guaranteed for this year, and it includes the $208 million that he has guaranteed over the next amount of time. So I believe that it is fully guaranteed based off of the wording of Woj's tweet. Now, he could be wrong. We've seen these guys be wrong before, but I don't think that Murray would have signed a deal that would not have been fully guaranteed. So I think that it is probably fully guaranteed. Now, I've known to have been wrong before. So we will see. I do not have the information. I'm not going to sit here and say that I have the stipulation information this time. And then Chris asks, how does this affect the Nuggets with the second apron? I talked about that a little bit earlier, but let me just pull this back up. Denver, I'm going to move your comments here. Denver's now got 5.3 million above or like below the second apron in this year. And then next year, when that contract kicks in, it is 7.3 million below the super tax apron at that point. So you see how many players that Denver has committed, though. Aaron Gordon is on a player option, though. Dario Saric, player option. Russell Westbrook, player option. If those guys opt in, then that number is included. The Aaron Gordon extension and or renegotiation will really affect what the second apron does. But suffice to say, Murray, Porter, Jokic, those three make up the large majority of Denver's cap, and that is going to take up as much space as possible. So Denver will be battling the second apron no matter what happens with AG. And yeah, do you think this affects AG's upcoming contract? I think that Denver can still sign it. It's a designation of, are they willing to go into the second apron or not? What I will say, and look, I don't want to look. I've been accused of throwing out alarm bells here. I have heard that the Nuggets are viewing the second apron as a hard cap from an ownership standpoint. That is something that I have heard. I am not going to sit here and say that that is 100% true and that they could absolutely change their mind when it comes to Aaron Gordon, but I don't think they changed their mind when it came to KCP. KCP was viewed as superfluous for the overall championship picture. I don't know whether Aaron Gordon will be superfluous to them. Cedric says, one last question. Ryan, is Zeke hopefully going to get moved this season? I don't know about hopefully, man. Like I'm at this point, I'm done talking about the Zeke Najee contract for obvious reasons. Everybody brings it up, and especially when you see it on that, when you see it on that listing, you understand why people talk about it. I think in general that Zeke has a chance of getting moved, but he doesn't have a lot of value. And there is a possibility, given the Duron Holmes injury, that he actually plays a role this upcoming season and that him being around actually provides some bench size that Denver could use. I can see a duo of Dario Saric, Zeke Najee working in the front court. Does it work that well with Peyton Watson and Russell Westbrook? Probably not. So Denver's got to figure it out. Actually, Chris also asks, this is something I should probably address on my own show. I talked about this on the Locked On Nuggets pod with Swipa. Chris asks, kind of off topic, you may have talked about this already, but what do you think of the report saying that Malone and the front office are not on the same page right now? They're not on the same page all the time. Like that's part of the song and dance that happens with a front office and coaching staff. Now, Zach Lowe discussed it as, hey, this could be a little bit stronger than what a normal coach front office relationship is from kind of a strained uncomfortability standpoint. They have not been on the same page. Calvin Booth has obviously gone in his path to try to provide the Nuggets with long-term rookie contracts, sustainability from a playing time standpoint off the bench. Michael Malone has not really agreed with that standpoint, and I think he would prefer veterans, even if they are on one-year contracts, to come in to play a mercenary role and to really help out the team from a night-to-night basis. Think your Justin Holidays versus Jalen Pickett's. I obviously tend to side with Michael Malone on that one. I think that Denver should be trying to maximize the talent of their roster from year to year and not just from a long-term perspective. But I understand that and what Calvin has done has allowed Denver to have the flexibility to keep Christian Brown and Peyton Watson and Julian Strother and have some young playable wings that could potentially replace KCP and Justin Holiday in no uncertain terms. Now, it takes a leap of faith, and Michael Malone, I think, likes steadiness. He likes dependability, and I don't think he likes uncertainty. So that's where you kind of see it from. I don't necessarily think it's a problem. I don't necessarily know whether like it's ultimately going to be a long-term thing because Calvin Booth is on the final year of his contract and Michael Malone has 2 more years after this one, I think. So 24, 25. He's signed through the 2027 season. So he's got 3 years total. I don't know. I don't know what is ultimately going to become of it, but they've got some questions. And, go a long way is Jamal Murray being healthy. It's just like everything I think helps if Jamal Murray is out there for 70 games playing a consistent level and giving Denver an all-star caliber season because it alleviates a lot of the pressure that is on some of these other guys. So if Jamal can take some of the pressure off some of these other players, then I think that would help Calvin Booth. It would help Michael Malone. It would help Nikola Jokic. It would help just about everybody. So curious to see what happens. And final question that I will answer. Asher, shout out Asher. He asks, do you think that there is a shot at an AG extension this offseason? Absolutely. There is a shot at it. I don't think that he is eligible for one after the season begins. So we'll have to hear about it before October 20th or so. But deadlines often have a way of forcing negotiations, kind of like this one did, where Jamal and the Nuggets front office, they were at a deadline unofficially because nobody wanted to go to media day with a contract still outstanding. With AG, it's a little bit different because it hasn't been as public, but I think that AG will be willing to sign if Denver's willing to give him extensive money. There is a question about whether they're going to want to give him the maximum amount that they possibly can and whether AG will accept for anything less. So if they go into the season without an extension, it wouldn't shock me, but it's absolutely possible if they're willing to pay. All right. Folks, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll. Really appreciate everybody for stopping by on this Saturday afternoon. Hope everybody is having a great weekend. Please leave a like button and subscribe on the way out. I will be back next week doing some more 20Q, doing some more preview content for the upcoming Nugget season. Make sure to check out, if you're on Mile High Sports, make sure to go check out a lot of our Nuggets or Broncos coverage and Buffs coverage. The Buffs play tonight, I think at 5:30, I want to say. A lot of interesting things. A lot of interesting stuff happening in the Mile High City, and we're covering it here at Mile High Sports. Thank you so much, everybody. I will talk to you guys very soon.